So in this video, we're going to talk about my three most favorite foods that will really help support and balance your hormones. And what's interesting is one of these foods I've talked about, but I found some really cool science on two foods that we haven't talked about. So let's dive in because I want to break down the science and I want to show you how this fits into a fasting lifestyle. Ready? Here we go. First, I just want to bring everybody into the conversation for a hot moment. We have to remember that when we look at a 24-hour period, we have a time when we're fasting. I taught that to you in Fast Like a Girl. And we have a time where we're eating. And the idea when we look at metabolic health is that we should be able to switch in and out of these two states. And what's really interesting about this metabolic rhythm, this metabolic switch, is that when we dial it in and we get it really on point, it absolutely helps our hormonal rhythm. So in Fast Like a Girl, I showed you how fasting can really balance hormones when you cycle it and you bring it in and out. What I'm now starting to do with you all here, and I have a book coming for you all very soon that I cannot wait to announce and bring to you, is we got to talk about the eating window. And what is it in the eating window that we should be avoiding, and what should we be eating in order to keep that hormonal rhythm in balance? And on this video, we're going to go through three very specific things. Now, before I dive into that, I just want to point out that the killers of hormones are your refined white sugar, your refined white flour, alcohol, the endocrine disrupting chemicals like obesogens that are being poured into our food system. So I really like when you walk into a grocery store, I really like for you to stay on the outside of those aisles because everything in the middle aisles are where we start to go astray with our food. It's highly processed food that's really damaging to our hormones. Or better yet, make sure you're shopping at a farmer's market. We try to do that in my household as much as possible. Okay, with that foundation in mind, let's bring back into the conversation, the eating window food conversation, two major types of foods. One falls under the category of phytoestrogens, and the other one falls under the category of phytoprogestins, which is really cool because I haven't talked to you all about phytoprogestins. So we're going to dive into that here in a moment. Now, I want to address, because I know this is we're living in the most interesting time because we've gone from this cultural hush where we don't talk about our cycles, we don't talk about menopause, to what I call cultural chaos. And put in the comments if you're yeah, I'm really confused. So we're bringing back into at least the perimenopause and menopause conversation, should we be doing HRT and patches and troches and creams and all those bioidenticals that are accessible to us? And I love that this conversation is being had, but we don't have a real clear answer yet. So, but at least we're open to it. So I'd also, I'd like to bring back into the conversation phytoestrogens. And I did a really beautiful interview with my favorite integrative OB. Her name is Dr. Felice Gersh on the Resetter podcast. My team will leave the link in here where we talk about the power of phytoestrogens for bringing estrogen levels up. And what we know is that around 40, that estrogen levels are starting to decline. Specifically estradiol. She is the most powerful form of estrogen that released an egg out of our ovaries every month and also supplied great neuroprotective benefits and cardiovascular benefits. Every single organ system in the body has a receptor site for estradiol. So as estradiol is going down, our overall estrogen levels are going down. We need to look at bringing some of these phytoestrogens back in. And the most famous one, and the one I'm hoping we're going to bring back to the food conversation, is soy. So if you've been scared to eat soy, I really want you to take note of what I'm about to say, because I'm going to give you some really cool science that is showing that soy actually can be a protective estrogen and can actually protect us from certain hormonal cancers. So here we go. Here's some of the studies for you to know. And I'll link all the studies in there for the science hounds that want to take this to your doctor, or if you are a doctor and you're listening to this and you just want to rest assured that what I'm saying has science behind it, here you go. Okay, so a couple of ones that I really like. The first one is just a 2013 study that said eating soy isoflavonoids, which is what this is, can significantly increase estrogen levels. So straight across study just showing when we're eating soy isoflavonoids, like something in edamame or tofu, or I found this really cool dried soy that was neat. I always like just give me what nature made the best, and let's not do too much to it. But if you love edamame, I highly recommend bringing edamame back into it, because, and tofu even, because we haven't altered that too much. But so 2013 showed that it increased estrogen. Okay, the next one for my menopausal women. So a 2021 study showed that eating isoflavonoids and other phytoestrogens, so there's a lot of them, and I'll talk about some of them here in a moment, significantly reduced symptoms of menopause. Okay, so let's talk about the most prominent symptom of menopause, which is a hot flash. That is when estrogen hits a low, and then your body turns up its heat. So if we can bring some of these plant-based estrogens back into our diet, we can keep our level of estrogen a little bit higher, even if we're doing a patch, even if we're doing creams. It's a beautiful combination, and keep that estrogen level a little bit higher than if you were not doing the addition of the phytoestrogens. And that will make sure that the estrogen doesn't plummet so low you end up with a hot flash. So I'd love, and the study went on to talk about other symptoms of low estrogen, like mental clarity. Remember, I taught you all here that estrogen brings the girl gang with her, right? So whenever estrogen comes in during our cycle, she brings dopamine and serotonin and acetylcholine and glutamate and oxytocin and BDNF. She brings all these neurochemicals with her. So when she goes away, those chemicals become more vulnerable, and all of a sudden your brain focus becomes really different. So again, coming back to the power of the earth in providing us a phytoestrogen like soy can really help with all kinds of menopausal symptoms. Okay, here's one of my favorite studies that I'm bringing you. This one is a 2020 review that showed soy isoflavonoids speed up metabolism. Okay, this one, you have to understand, I am not a fan of a magic pill for weight loss, for speeding up our metabolism. I am all about teaching you a lifestyle that brings yourself back into rhythm. We have been discussing this metabolic rhythm and how it relates to your hormonal rhythm. Now, one of the things that's interesting that this 2020 study showed us was that when we bring certain soy phytoestrogens back into our diet, like soy, is that it speeds up metabolism by stimulating what we call myoblasts. And myoblasts are cells that build muscle. So you could literally take this study and say, oh, that's interesting. Soy has a muscle building property to it. Now, there's been great discussion on bringing protein back. There's been a lot of great discussion in the menopausal world about the power of building muscle just on our longevity. But can we now bring back, based off studies like this 2021, can we bring back the idea that all the different foods, all the different proteins that help us build muscle are massively important for the perimenopause and menopausal experience, and soy is one of them. Okay, the last couple things I want to talk about and I've mentioned this before, is that soy isoflavonoids can also improve bone density. And I'm going to just take you on a little side turn here on bone density, which is AKA osteoporosis. So osteoporosis happens because of the loss of estrogen. And so again, let's bring the phytoestrogens back in. That's what this study says, is that, and I'll give you the exact quote, they found that soy isoflavonoids increased bone density in the spine and the femurs, that's your leg, of postmenopausal women. Okay? The femur head, the acetabulum, this is your hip. So we have a lot of hip replacements going on because of that bone density issue. So how about we bring soy back into that conversation? I love that. Now, there are a lot of different ways before I move on to the second food different forms of soy that you might find interesting. Like you might be listening to this and you're like, hey, Dr. Mindy, I hate edamame. I got you. I don't hate it, but some of you might. So other ideas is that you can do raw soybeans, edamame, tofu, soy nuts, soy milk, and tamari. Now, soy milk is I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm not a huge fan because it can be ultra processed. But if you were making your own soy milk, now it would be different. And then please keep in mind that soy is one of those crops that is heavily sprayed with pesticides. So let's try to make sure that we are getting organic soy always. Okay? So there you go. That's soy. Okay, number 2. I haven't even gotten to the other 2. Hopefully you're running out and grabbing yourself some tofu at this moment. So number 2, this is one I put on everything, and it is sesame seeds. So I sprinkle it on salads. I put it on meats. I put it on forbidden rice, happens to be one of my favorite, sweet potatoes. Put in the comments how many of you saw the cooking show that I did here on my channel with Leanne Rhymes, and we talk about sweet potatoes, the power of sweet potatoes. You can, if you put some sesame seeds on your sweet potato, you're getting a progesterone building food mixed with a phytoestrogen building food. Now, here's what I want you to know about sesame seeds, is that sesame seeds also increase estrogen levels. Several studies have shown that. And it does that because they're rich in what they call sesamin or sesamolin, which are just naturally occurring parts of the sesame seed that stimulate estrogen production. So again, let's put this in the context of everything that we're trying to do with our hormones. We put the patches on to increase estrogen. Why don't we use foods that nature provided to increase estrogen? Why don't we do them both? And sesame seeds you can buy. I got this one. I'm in Los Angeles right now, where they're one of the best grocery stores on the planet, Air One. I got it at Air One, but a lot of natural food stores will have it, which is a great resource to just sprinkle on top of everything. Okay, number 3. This is my favorite one, and I'm so excited to bring this to you because I've been diving into all the healing properties of food, specifically plants, and how they intersect with our hormones. And I recently came across a term that is not used enough, which is a phytoprogestin. A phytoprogestin is a food that increases progesterone, just like a phytoestrogen. So, and one of the best phytoprogestins is parsley. So, the funny thing about parsley, I'm a big salad fan. I make salads all the time for my family. And I'll just take like a head of parsley like this, and I'll just chop it up and just put it in with a whole bunch of other greens. I like to put it in with dandelion greens and spring mix. I put a little mint in there. I try to get as many greens as possible. And parsley is always one of my go-tos. And the interesting part about a fibery meal like that, like I just explained, like a salad like that, is it has that fiber in it that's going to help to balance blood sugar. But fiber is also important for feeding what we call your estrobolome. And your estrobolome is the part of the bacteria in your gut that break estrogen down. So when we look at something like parsley, it has a sort of a double whammy where it's increasing progesterone, it's feeding the microbiome that helps break estrogen down. So and remember, estrogen and progesterone are always working in balance with each other. Now, put in that salad, I just thought of this, some soybeans, and now you've got a phytoestrogen and a progestin meal, and you're feeding the microbiome, and it's full of fiber, so you're regulating blood sugar. It's a win-win-win. So, but the interesting thing I want to point out on some of these studies about these progestins, and then I'll tell you some other really great progestins, is that they're finding, this is the one that I really think is interesting, is they're finding, it was a 2018 study, that there's a specific component of parsley, and it's a highly scientific name, and it's called an apigenin. And an apigenin actually can activate your progesterone receptor sites. Okay, let me just put this in a lifestyle context for you. So one of the challenges as we've moved into these creams and these troches and the patches of the bioidenticals is there's a new concept that's coming out a lot about we're losing the sensitivity of our receptor sites because we're doing these things over and over again. But what this study showed, this 2018 study showed that it found that apigenins activate progesterone receptor sites, specifically the ones in the uterus, where increased progesterone has the biggest impact. Now, it's ironic that I'm doing this video on this day because I just had an amazing podcast interview with Dr. Amy Killen for the Resetter podcast. And we talked about the differences between progesterone cream and actually orally taking progesterone. And she said one of the reasons she's a fan of oral progesterone is because it has more of a protective uterine effect. Well, I literally just left that conversation. You can listen to it on the Resetter podcast. But now we're looking at the possibility of something like parsley having this same protective effect on the uterus. So again, as we're going into this cultural chaotic moment where we're talking about all these creams and all these patches, please let's not lose sight that nature provided us a tremendous amount of resources to help balance our hormones. We can't just always turn to medication and say, boom, it's the medication that's going to heal me. I'm not saying don't do that. I like bringing that back in the conversation, but we cannot lose sight of the power of food. And when I break down foods like sesame seeds and soy and parsley, I really see that we can bring estrogen up and we can bring progesterone up and we can create this protective experience for our body through the power of food. We can do it in the eating window and then we can go into our fasting window and we can heal ourselves there as well. Do you see how it all comes together? Please let me know in the comments if you're like, I'm getting it. I see it in bigger picture. Because I'm not here on YouTube to just teach you one-offs. I'm here to get you to think in a broader way so you can use these concepts to really create a body that you love. And so many of us that have gone through that menopausal process have experienced a lot of moments of suffering. So let's bring some of these concepts together so we can see how they all link. Okay, last thing I want to tell you is that it's really interesting because there are a lot of phytoprogestin foods. Now, I brought you the sweet potato, that's my favorite, but here's some more. Broccoli and kale, green tea, artichokes, and thyme. They're all really great phytoprogestins where they are stimulating progesterone production, plus they're increasing the activation of the receptor sites in the uterus. So there you go. I mean, how crazy is that? You walk into your grocery store, you're like, do I like parsley? Do I like soy? Where the next level thinking I want you to think about is, what does this food do to my hormones? And there are 3 of my favorites. So let me know if that helps. Put it in the comments. If you have any great hacks for how you cook this stuff, we're a community here, put it in the comments. But as always, don't give up on yourself. You are never out of answers. You are living in a body that always wants to regulate itself. And we've got to bring food back into the conversation to help hormonal regulation, just like we've been having an incredible conversation about the timing of food for hormonal regulation. Now let's marry the two. Let's talk about drinks that will help balance your hormones. And these you're gonna wanna know. This is one of those videos that is gonna blow your mind and is gonna make you stand up and cheer and be so happy. So in this video, we're going through some drinks. And it also leads to the conversation of even some foods that will help you balance hormones naturally. Are you ready? I feel like I need a drum roll. Okay, first drink that increases specifically progesterone. And I know when I say this drink, you're gonna be like, no, but I'm gonna show you the science on it so that you can kind of wrap your head around it. But the drink that can help increase progesterone is